Coming up on 9 News Mornings, it's been 4 years since the death of Elijah McClain. Now we know the fate of the 2 officers charged in his death. Well, we are waking up to another loss for the Broncos, what the Broncos need to think about before their next game. And don't open umbrellas inside, don't walk under a ladder. It's Friday the 13th, and we want to know, what are your superstitions? Text us at 303-871-1491. We want to get right to some breaking news this morning. Just in the last half hour, the Union for Kaiser Permanente healthcare workers say they have reached a tentative agreement with the company. Earlier this month, thousands of workers walked off the job last week across the country. That includes 3,000 people here in Colorado. The union says the new agreement includes a wage increase, protections against outsourcing, and funding for growth and education. We have reached out to Kaiser about the tentative agreement and are waiting to hear back. We're going to keep you updated throughout the morning as we learn more.
Well, good Friday morning, the 13th, taking a live look at Denver. I know. So did that wind keep you up last night? Some places saw wind, temps in the 50s. Others saw temps cold enough to dump several inches of snow up at the ski resorts. Thanks for joining us, Corey, Anusha, Brianna, and Ed with you this morning. Yeah, Friday the 13th, not off to a great start for you, Ed.
I walk in and no graphics for the computer, nothing. So we finally figured out that it either shut itself down for whatever reason, Friday the 13th or whatever, and Mallory, who was just a genius, said, I think that should be on. But it's way in the back where all the engineers sit.
Yeah,
so
exactly. It's always something like that.
But I think I've caught up now, so let's see if it works. Let's take a look at what we've got going on right now and see what it is. Take a look outside. 38 degrees at this hour, and you see our storm. It is off to the northeast of us. Upper Midwest will get the brunt of this storm now, and we only have just a few scattered snow showers, rain showers over the eastern plains are all drifting out. That's what we will see today. Going to mostly sunny skies, but the cold air stays in place. That northerly flow continues. And then tomorrow morning, we start with a few clouds. Tomorrow afternoon, we have a few clouds, so partly cloudy skies for your Saturday. We do have that freeze watch and warning from midnight tonight until 9 a.m. on Saturday morning. Many locations over the eastern plains, including Denver, will see the first below freezing temperature of the season. And we also have a high wind warning that goes until noon today, and that's going to make those chilly temperatures feel even worse. So here's what we're looking for highs today, mostly 50s, 60s over the eastern plains, 40s, 50s, and 60s to the mountains and west. And then the lows tonight, there you see it over the east, lots of temperatures in the 20s and below that 32-degree mark. So the first freeze of the season. We'll see that in the high country too, 20s and 30s and 40s out to the west. So Denver, mostly sunny, breezy, cool, 56 for tonight, clear skies, breezy, and 36. And then 60 for tomorrow, 70 for your Sunday, 72 on Monday. Look at your Tuesday, near 80 degrees before the next system comes our way. 65 on Wednesday, a few showers. We'll stay in the 60s Thursday and Friday.
Awesome. Thank you, Ed. Happy Friday, everyone. Right now, we're taking a live look from our CDOT cameras, I-25 and 23rd Avenue. We are not seeing any delays and no crashes to report along I-25. But I do want to switch things over to our main maps because I did see a little bit of a delay for those taking southbound I-25 right at the intersection of 58th Avenue. It looks like it already cleared up because we are in the green. So let me give you those drive times if you are taking I-25, maybe heading a little bit up north. 144th Avenue, it's going to be a 7-minute drive. You can see those speed times looking pretty good, 77 miles per hour. And here are your drive times for those taking I-25 to I-225. We're still in the green there as well. No crashes to report. East and westbound lanes, 7-minute drive. Enjoy.
For that, Brianna. After 2 full days of deliberations, we now know the fate of 2 officers involved in the death of Elijah McClain.
A jury found suspended Aurora police officer Randy Rodima guilty of criminally negligent homicide and 3rd-degree assault. The jury acquitted former officer Jason Rosenblatt of all charges. 9 News reporter Courtney Yoon joins us now. And Courtney, mixed reactions for this verdict.
Yeah, that's right. Good morning, Corey and Anusha. There was a guilty verdict in this trial, yet it didn't go as far as prosecutors hoped. The jury did not find Randy Rodima guilty of the most serious charges he faced. Instead, he was convicted on lesser charges that carry shorter sentences. And then the family of Elijah McClain is disappointed, saying this verdict is not justice, unable to create systemic change. It took 3 weeks of trial, 24 witnesses, and 16 hours of deliberations for the jury to come to a verdict. One officer faces a prison sentence, the other walked out a free man. Rosenblatt was involved in the initial stop, but wasn't there during the large segments of the incident. Rodima was on McClain for much of the struggle, seen repeatedly using force and body camera footage. The spot where the officers stopped McClain 4 years ago is now marked with a small memorial. Last night, people gathered there to remember him.
I'm looking at the grass that will never be green again, where Elijah was murdered. I'm thinking about the way in which we hear the word conviction and we automatically believe that something good just happened, when really it didn't.
Randy Rodema is scheduled for sentencing on January 5th. He faces punishments from probation up to a maximum of 6 years in prison if the judge finds special aggravating factors. The Aurora interim police chief did release a statement after saying the department respects the verdict but isn't saying more than that. Corey, Anusha.
Thanks so much for that, Courtney. We appreciate it. Elijah McClain's mother, Shanine McClain, has been very vocal throughout the last 4 years. She's been pushing for justice for not only her son, but also participated in the protests for George Floyd. She views yesterday's verdict as anything but justice.
Right is right and wrong is wrong. And when you continue to allow the type of injustice that happened to my son, there is so much to work on. There's no way we're gonna get to unity. No, it's not enough, because Rodema wasn't alone in what he did to my son. He had accomplices. He had buddies with badges that are all bullies. So it's not a victory for me.
We've reached out to both Aurora Police and the City of Aurora to ask about the status of the officers' jobs, but we didn't get answers. APD suspended Rodema and fired Rosenblatt. We still have 2 more trials ahead for the 3rd officer and 2 paramedics. Nathan Woodyers was the first officer who stopped McClain. Jury selection for Woodyers' trial is scheduled to start today. The 2 paramedics who sedated McClain, Jeremy Cooper and Peter Chkuniak, are scheduled to go to trial next month.
The death of Elijah McClain led to significant statewide police reform that now is impacting how every officer in Colorado does their job. More than 2 years after McClain's death, Aurora Police and Aurora Fire Rescue entered into a consent decree as a part of an agreement with Colorado's Attorney General's office. The police department had to develop new policies to tackle what state investigators described as routine racially biased policing, with other officers repeatedly using unlawful excessive force. They're still under an oversight from an independent monitor. In the aftermath of the racial justice protests over McClain's death and George Floyd's murder, state lawmakers passed a sweeping police reform law. It banned chokeholds like the one officers used on McClain and required every law enforcement agency in the state to use body-worn cameras by this summer. Another state law passed in 2021 makes it so that officers cannot direct paramedics to give sedatives like ketamine as a part of the arrest.
Law enforcement across the U.S. are increasing patrols as calls for attacks in the Jewish community intensify. Right now, law enforcement leaders say there are no credible threats of violence, but they are taking precautionary measures. Israel is urging more than 1 million people leaving in northern Gaza to evacuate within 24 hours. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is planning to visit Israel today to determine what military aid is needed in their war with Hamas. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is meeting with senior officials in Jordan. As the fighting continues, the Biden administration says it's working to get Americans out of harm's way.
The United States government will arrange charter flights to provide transportation from Israel to sites in Europe.
Members of Congress are expected to receive a classified briefing on the war next week.
The U.S. and Qatar have now reached, quote, a quiet understanding not to allow Iran access to any of the $6 billion in humanitarian aid originally promised. The move was originally part of a deal to free 5 Americans that the U.S. says were wrongfully detained in Iran. But following Hamas's bloody attack on Israel, the funds will now remain on hold in Qatar. There were bipartisan calls to freeze the funds following the attacks on Saturday. And while there's been speculation that Iran somehow supported the Hamas attack, so far officials say there is no definitive proof.
New Jersey Democratic Senator Bob Menendez is facing more charges today. Federal prosecutors filed an indictment this morning with additional charges against him and his wife. Authorities accuse the couple of accepting bribes from a foreign government and acting as an agent for Egypt. The new indictment says he provided sensitive government information to Egypt. Menendez and his wife have pleaded not guilty.
Right now, House Republicans still cannot agree on a new House Speaker. They say there are a few holdouts that are preventing the election of a Speaker. House Republicans are expected to huddle again again later this morning. This is after Congressman Steve Scalise dropped out of the running because he couldn't get enough votes. And until a speaker is elected, the House cannot reopen for business.
5 centuries later, and scientists are now proving there are mysteries to uncover in the Mona Lisa. Researchers used X-rays to peer into the chemical structure of the oil paint and found Leonardo da Vinci used a rare compound in his oil paint recipe that is used to thicken paint. That recipe was not thought to be discovered until centuries later, meaning the technique could have been used in other famous artists' work earlier than expected.